When I first started writing fantasy, I quickly reached an obstacle because at the beginning of the story, I didn't know why things were the way they were. What past events had brought my character's world to its present state? Why did they face the constraints that made them act the way they acted or make choices the way they did? I needed historical context. I needed a timeline. I needed a map. What I needed was a history for my world, all neatly laid out. But you know what? It didn't exist because I hadn't created it yet. As a writer, creating a rich and detailed history for your fictional world can help bring it to life and captivate your readers. In this episode called Past and Present, Explore History's Legacy, we'll go over 5 tips to help you create and remember your world's history and use it then to drive your stories forward. Hey, Writing Pursuits authors, welcome back to the podcast. To those of you who are new, I want to extend a special welcome. My name is Kathrese McKee, and I'm glad you're here. Let me start with this. There are as many ways to create your world-building history as there are authors who have done it. So you will develop your own system. So the ideas I am going to share are a starting place or possible additions to what you are already doing. Also, in my personal opinion, you don't need to write a history book before you begin writing your story. Maybe I'm picking a fight, but there are lots of authors out there who have been world building for years, basically, but they haven't finished their first story yet. World building is in service of story, not the other way around. I am more of a plotter for my stories and more of a pantser for my world building. But once I make a world building decision, it needs to be locked down and documented for the sake of consistency. Also, I'm not minimizing the importance of world building, not at all. This is the 5th part of a series about world building, so clearly I think it's important. Just don't make it an excuse for not writing the story already, okay? So here are 5 tips to help you create and remember your world's history and use it to drive your stories forward. First, you must know where your story is set. Is it Earth, alternative Earth, or somewhere else? In part 2 of this series, we discussed nature's realm, which covered climate, habitat, weather, and topographical considerations. Clearly, you need a map, or maybe a bunch of maps. Even if you're writing historical fiction or contemporary fiction, maps are extremely helpful. You need a map. A map can be as simple as a drawing on a napkin or as detailed as a digital file. For my own series, I started with a spiral notebook and that became a digital file later. Once I had it all straightened out, fantasy and science fiction authors get a map for your world and put it in your book and on your website and in a wiki. If you go that far, your readers expect maps, so make sure you have them. Your map should note major geographical features, including mountains, valleys, deserts, oceans, rivers, lakes and streams, forests, jungles, badlands, cities, towns, and borders. Second, you must know when your stories happen. Where and when are twins like sides of a coin. They both must be present. Where things happen is critical to historical context, and so is when things happen. When in your world's history does your story occur? Does it happen at the world's inception? Or does it happen during a golden age? Or does it happen during a time of terrible struggle and uncertainty? Remember when you were in social studies class and the teacher, made us draw timelines? Well, now you can create your own timeline, and your social studies teacher doesn't get to tell you if it's wrong. So if you have 2 civilizations, parallel timelines are helpful. You can create timelines with pen and paper, but software exists in our world. So see what I did there? So why not take advantage of the technology? World Anvil is a frequently recommended site to help creators make timelines and many other things. I will include a link in the show notes. Recently, I interviewed Troy Lambert about Plotter.com in episode 50 of Writing Pursuits podcast. Plotter also has timelines and provides for a story Bible. I love mind maps for this purpose too. Digital mind maps make it easy to just keep going and going with no end in sight, to rearrange, to erase, and to edit history on the fly. Honestly, spreadsheets are a useful tool for documenting historical timelines, so don't overlook the lowly spreadsheet. Some folks want to know every single detail about how the world came to be, and to each their own, but it is probably adequate to name major slices of time, their duration, the major features of each epoch, and then settle on when your story is set. Third, how will your decisions about where and when affect your characters and the plot of your story? At this point, you will know the historical context for how and why your characters make their choices and the consequences that are likely to spring from those choices. The historical context of your story will dictate society's rules, which we discussed in part 3 of this series. Go back to that episode to find a wealth of possibilities for generating plot ideas, conflict, and themes. If you're still having difficulty with the when of your story, it may be useful to stick a pin in your world's history with a technological limitation. One of the limitations I set in my world building for my first series was the rule: there's nothing like gunpowder, no explosives. So another limitation I set was no electricity or anything similar. Only fire for warmth and light in cold and dark places. Boom. Just like that, many decisions were made for the world and what was likely to have been discovered, what could be manufactured, and when my story was set in my alternative Earth. So, in part 4, we discussed technological knowledge and industrial achievement. So if you want some questions to consider, go back to that episode. Technology also dictates how history is passed on through the generations. Is history passed on by word of mouth, or is history readily available to anyone through advanced search engines? Try making a few rules about technology, and many things will fall into place. Fourth, you will need assistance to generate historical facts for your universe. My best suggestion is to be a student of Earth's history, because plot ideas are everywhere in recorded accounts around the world. If your imagination is running kind of empty, try some low-tech tools to move things along. Dungeons and Dragons, D&D, brought the D20 polyhedral dice to modern board games, but the D20 has been around for a few thousand years, and it is useful for making decisions about plot. In fact, D&D uses a D4, a D6, a D8, a D12, and a D20 for various purposes during gameplay. This idea isn't original to me, but you can assign various meanings or potential events to each side of the die and then cast it and record the results. Possible events can include things like drought, flood, famine, prosperity, disease, war, victory, defeat, revolt, peace, assassination, birth, and so on. With the D20, there's a 5% chance of any one thing happening, so you can create a rich variety of events. The number that comes up from a throw of any dice may also indicate the intensity of a given result, from negligible to world-shattering. I have 3 sets of Rory story cubes, which I've found very useful for sparking plot points. Each story cube set includes 9 6-sided dice with a unique pictogram on each side. That means for each set of 9 cubes, there are 54 images and over 10 million combinations. I will include a link in the show notes to Rory Story Cubes. There are many random event generators online too, so do not feel that you have to figure out every little thing on your own. 5, write everything down and keep it handy. Keep your maps, your storylines, and your historical details, your society's rules, and all the information about your characters and magic systems in some sort of story Bible. I have used Scrivener for this purpose in the past, but I'm leaning toward using Plotter or World Anvil or a note-taking app like OneNote, Notion, or Obsidian, which is my current favorite, for my future books. As long as you're keeping track, why not share your world building info with your fans in a wiki? Make your work count twice. Between books, fans can soak up the minutiae of your ever-expanding universe and enjoy the side stories and historical context that set your story in motion. Bonus tip: do not beat your reader down with the details in your manuscript. Leave them wanting more, not less. Do not be like that uncle with the endless travel photos nobody wants to see at the family reunion. Edit, condense, tantalize, and leave the details for your wiki. Nothing in our world happens in a vacuum. Even far-flung events have unexpected effects on you and me. Seemingly small disagreements spiral out of control and lead to worldwide conflict, like a single spark setting an entire forest on fire. Context makes all the difference. So be sure to consider history's legacy in your world building. The question of the week is, what is your method for creating the history for your fictional worlds, and how do you keep track? Leave your comments and questions below. Thanks for watching today. If you enjoyed this episode or learned something you can use, please give me a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to this channel and then click the notification bell so you never miss an episode. That's all I have for today. Until next time, keep writing, my friends. Keep writing.